There we
Oh,
are.
hello, Alistair.
Hi.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So well done for your win at Emerging Filmmakers Night. You won the Audience Award for Best Film. So how did the uh, evening go for you? How was the experience of having a screen of a live stream screening and live interaction with an audience? How was it for you?
It was actually really good. I mean, I was, obviously you're a bit unsure about how these things are all going to work out, especially when it's all, well, yeah, like you've said, it's all just comments through Facebook and stuff. So it was a little bit like, oh, how do I interact with everybody? But it went great. I mean, the Q&A went really well. I've had to do a few live Q&As before. So obviously it's a little bit different and maybe it's a little bit less stressful in a lot of ways. You're not having to look at a room of 100 people all staring at you. So it was quite nice to do it through Zoom, but it was just a great event and a really great night. And I was so surprised to actually win, like because all the other films I thought were really powerful and really impactful, while mine was a bit more of a comedy. So it was a bit of a surprise, but you can't complain, can you?
So I presume what happened was you submitted the film when you saw the call for films that EFN had put out, and it was specifically the theme
Yeah.
was specifically True Grit. So what made you think, right? I'll that ticks all the boxes, and I'll send this film. I'll send All Stretch Out to.
Yeah, it was. I knew Ever Philly. I'd met her before previously, and I knew that she did the Emerging Filmmakers Night, but I hadn't had a film that quite fit in with a category yet. I mean, I make quite a lot of dark comedies primarily, and then when I saw True Grit come up, it kind of because obviously the film's kind of a satire on that. It's sort of about how trying too hard sometimes is the worst thing that you can do. It can actually, a lot of the time, sometimes cause more harm than good. And I saw at the bottom, they said, on the blurb, it said, if you want to subvert the expectations, please feel free as well to submit. And I thought, well, why not, it was, yeah, obviously it felt a bit strange, but like after, like when you're watching it with all the other films there. I mean, the other winner, Singles, was that the name of that film?
Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was great, and just it was such a different tone and style to mine. But no, again, it was just so nice, and I just thought, why not? Like, let's see what happens. And luckily, they accepted it.
So you say you make a lot of dark comedies, and that's your, I guess, the genre you tend to go for. Is that what got you into
Mm.
filmmaking? Is that the kind of thing that you want to explore as a director?
Strange actually. So I guess in a lot of ways, I can actually. There's a moment I can sort of pinpoint. I've got family who live up in Scotland, and I was watching John Carpenter's The Thing with my uncle, which is obviously a horror film. I just remember just the atmosphere that made me feel, something, well, scared basically, and that was sort of what got me thinking. Well, I really like the idea of making stories and being able to create content for people to entertain or scare. And as I sort of developed my style a bit more, I started finding that dark comedies fit a nice in between, where you can scare people, you can be a bit horrific, but also you can have the humor in there as well. And I think it's something that people just think of horror films, or people think of dark comedies and they're like, oh, well, people think of horror films and they aren't necessarily meant to be funny. But I thought, well, why not? And dark comedy is a good way of subverting people's expectations. I, yeah, and All Stretched Out was kind of that. I wanted people to think they were watching a feel good, this guy's going to succeed sort of comedy, and then obviously the gut busting rip at the end is sort of where that twist came in. But I wouldn't want to specifically not label myself, but I wouldn't want to say all I ever want to make is dark comedies. I think it's a genre that I love comedy. I love all the sort of dark British shows, like there's this Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, or things like Brass Eye, or stuff like that, where it's sort of that twisted dark British humor. But I wouldn't want to, pigeonhole is not the right word. But I wouldn't want to say that's all I want to focus on.
Well, I was actually going to ask you if you were inspired by the work of specific filmmakers or specific TV shows.
Mm.
So it made me think of, in terms of TV shows, when you were speaking about the tone you wanted to get, I thought of, for example, The League of Gentlemen, which I
Yeah,
think gets body horror and comedy and satire and sheer kind of creepiness all mixed together perfectly. And in terms of films, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of the Duplass brothers.
oh yeah, I am.
So I thought a couple of their films had that balance just right. There's a really good film called Baghead, which is genuinely hilarious and genuinely really frightening at times.
Because I watched, it's funny you should mention the Duplass brothers, because I watched their, I think it's Mark Duplass made a Creep, which is like a low budget,
Yeah.
just handheld thing. And I watched that just a couple of days. And even though the character in that is, well, it's in the title, he is a creep, but you sort of, it's funny as well. You know, you almost don't know how to handle the situation because, yeah, I think sometimes horror can make you laugh just by a reaction. You see something so bizarre or someone so strange, it can sort of create that. And you're definitely right about The League of Gentlemen. I spent many hours watching that when I was younger. Season 1 and 2 are my favorite, and it, you know, it again, it's just like you said, it's that sort of that British dark, creepy sort of, is it a comedy, is it a horror, what is it, you know? But I was thinking of stuff like Monty Python as well, because All Stretched Out obviously is a little bit of just, I wouldn't necessarily call it a sketch, but because it's so short, 3.5 minutes, it does kind of have that feel to it. And obviously Monty Python are pure absurd humor, and that's sort of what I was going for as well. But it's strange you say League of Gentlemen, because I hadn't, don't know why I didn't think of that straight away, but yeah, that's a classic show that I love so much. There's also, what do they work on now? Inside Number 9. Have you seen that? Yeah, amazing.
Inside Number, yeah, I have, yeah. Very, very
Yeah.
good, very clever. But they're very good at exactly kind of quite in your face body horror gore, but it's not gratuitous. It really works.
Oh.
And talking about that, can you tell us a little bit more about the effects used, I guess, how you made that scene work?
So
what materials you used?
Yeah, I can't take all the credit. Obviously, I didn't make the body myself, but I met I went to Cannes just to go there for a weekend. Basically, this was about two years ago. I wasn't there for any. I had a film in the short corner, a short that I did a few years ago called Osteopathy, and I met a prosthetics artist there. And I've been desperately trying to find someone. I'd had this idea, and I was like, could you make me a body that would rip in half? And he was like, mate, of course I can. So 3-4 months later, I get in contact with him. He says he's up for it. And basically what he made, it's funny because he sort of was hiding the body from me. He wasn't showing me exactly what it was going to look like at the end. And when it arrived on set, it was actually, well, the skin was yellow. It looked like a Simpsons character in a lot of ways. So that was a little bit disconcerting to begin with. But obviously I had a VFX artist as well who said, that's no problem, we can match the skin tone. So what we did is we had this half torso, I guess, had the camera down by the side and got someone just to literally rip the top half of the body off. He'd inserted all these squirty, like these blood squirting things inside of it. So that's where all the blood's flowing from. And he made the guts out of, I think it was just rolled up paper mache and just bits of gunk and just blood. And, you know, it's quite amazing what you can, like, even when I look at it, it's how realistic, it actually turned out to be. I mean, one of the things I found sad, though, was I really wanted it all to be practical. I didn't want to have to rely on any visual effects afterwards. But it's the nature of the beast. It was a low-budget short. And the guy, he'd already made us the body. And in the end, I luckily, so I mentioned I work at a film school, and one of the students there, conveniently, he'd been doing VFX on, he actually worked on a Wes Anderson film recently, Isle of Dogs. So he just was like, I'll do you a favor. I can match the skin tone. I can make the guts pop out of the body. And yeah, that's how we did it in the end. So tried to do as much in camera as possible.
but that's the
Sorry.
what I think credits this film really with artistry. I love the fact that it's tangible, that it's actual craft that makes these effects come to life instead of CGI and VFX and everything that's computer generated, which starts to feel completely unreal and just really affects, I think, the viewing experience. So it's always a pleasure to see that come to life. And so in terms of your work, now, are you a full-time filmmaker? Do you work across a number of fields? What else do you do alongside it?
So ideally, yeah, at the moment I'm still, obviously it's hard times for everybody, so I still have a full-time job that isn't solely filmmaking, unfortunately. But I am aiming to write and direct primarily. I've been, yeah, I mean, over the last 4 years I've made 4 shorts, so I'm sort of starting to get to that point where I need to start thinking of getting a feature off the ground somehow. I've got a few written, so it's obviously it's finding investors and people who might be interested, and actually getting a second draft done as well. That's been the one positive of lockdown, obviously, just having all that time to focus again. But no, I mean, at the moment I'm solely a writer director. And obviously with my full-time job as well, so it gets hard to find the time, but it's the motivation as well. You have to really tell yourself when you get home, try and do an hour of writing at least, or just an hour just looking over your script or anything like that, really.
You work, am I right in saying you work at the London Film Academy?
Yes.
What do you do there, if you don't
Yeah, so oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I should have. Yeah, so I work in the equipment office there, actually. So I run the kit room, which is obviously very helpful when we need extra bits of gear. But it's also a great place just to like meet fellow creatives. You know, there's a DOP who I've been working with now for well, he's been the DOP of all my shorts, who I met there, Giovanni, a great guy, and it just helps build those sort of connections. And even just talking to the students, or the students, you know, maybe asking for advice or just asking you to watch their films. It's like, I think it's important, and I feel like people don't do it enough, but some of the best ways to learn how to make a movie or what shots and why you use certain shots is to watch a lot of films. So it's good to see the student work and be like, well, maybe what you needed here is another close-up, because then it makes you think afterwards. You're like, okay, well, I'll make sure I get more close-ups at least, or things like that, you know.
So you said you were working on a feature project. Is there anything you can tell us about it, or is it very much under wraps for the moment?
I wouldn't say that. So it's this is why I didn't want to say like pigeonholing myself, because it's actually more of a sort of sci-fi drama. It's kind of going a more, I guess, you know, it's a bit cliche now, obviously, but the Black Mirror sort of vibe. I mean, it was an idea I had a few years ago, and I was talking to my mum, and I asked her, I was sort of asking her like, why don't you kill some time by playing video games or something? And she was like, I'm too busy for that. But it sort of got me thinking about, if you had, let's say if you were a middle class or, you know, wealthy housewife and you didn't have to worry about anything in the world, but if you could play a virtual reality game where you could create strife for yourself to make your own life a bit more difficult. It's sort of a weird concept where I sort of wanted to think, like, sometimes when life's easy, you don't feel like you're really doing anything. While if there's actually issues and things you have to overcome, it kind of makes your life more worth living in a way. So that's the basic idea, but it is middle-class housewife gets addicted to virtual reality gaming. So that's one of the features. Yeah. And the other one is a short TV show. It's kind of, I kind of wanted to make a Goonies / kidulthood adventure film. So yeah, I'm kind of trying to split out of just the pure dark comedy genres at the moment.
Sounds good. Sounds promising.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
have you been on the festival circuit this year at all? As well stretched out the festival circuit?
Yeah, so we got into London Short Film Festival, and then it's done another 10, obviously not no huge major festivals, but obviously the London Short Film Festival was the biggest one that it got. That was, well, basically back in February, so just before lockdown, really. So unfortunately, a lot of the other festivals have either had to be postponed or delayed. Or I was meant to go to Germany for one as well, and unfortunately that got pushed back. So it's had quite a lot of festival success. I mean, I think the film, it's interesting because like when people see it, they love it. But for some festivals, I can imagine, because it's not quite horror, it's not quite comedy, they sometimes find it a bit hard to work out where to program it. But I think with every festival rejection, I'm not going to say it makes you stronger, but you have to just deal with it and take it day by day, really.
How have you found COVID impacting your work at the moment, given you've got a couple of ideas in the pipeline? Are you trying to navigate the industry and what you can feasibly do given those restrictions?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tried to adapt these scripts to a post-COVID world yet, so I haven't written in everyone's keeping 2 meters distant and wearing masks. I've still got some small hope that things might eventually return to normal. And I guess the way I'm thinking is I want to get the scripts written, finished, so that, next year, hopefully things begin to improve again, so that I can start, that's when I'm really thinking of starting to pitch them to people again. Luckily, I have a couple of other shorts or another short that's in post now, so that will hopefully tide me over for a little bit. But it's very difficult, and there is a lot of uncertainty because you're not really sure what the best avenue to take is. Either you don't want to wait forever to make these films, but you don't want to rush them and just push them out in a situation like this where it might not work, and it will kind of compromise some of the visions that I've had for the film. Like again, it's not the end of the world, but with the adventure film, like there's scenes in nightclubs and scenes like people huddled up close together and fight scenes, and that just won't work in this kind of reality at the moment. So I'm sort of keeping my fingers crossed and hoping next year things might get a bit more back to normal.
Yeah, fingers crossed for everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
On a final note, would you have any recommendations for us? Anything you've seen either on the festival circuit or on TV, or perhaps at the cinema recently, probably online?
Yeah,
anything to keep an eye?
Nothing brand new that I've watched regularly. I mean, I've seen recently. Obviously, I went to see Tenet. That was a film, I guess. It was nice. It was nice being back in a cinema at least. I think in a lot of ways, I watched one of the last films I saw in the cinema before lockdown was The Lighthouse, the Roger Eggers film, which I loved. Yes. And I thought it was such an interesting, just the way they used the camera, like, and the film stock, just to, like, the moment that film opened, I was like, I believed I was back in the 19th century on some abandoned lighthouse. And I think it's important for people to see how, you using the camera and using film and things like that, you can create a tone that's set up straight away. And it doesn't just have to be because of, the actors and stuff like that.
Nice. Well, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.